Would you answer a call from your future self, knowing it could reveal your darkest actions? Tonight, I'll tell you about a man who did just that, and the chilling secrets he discovered. So grab your headphones, dim the lights, and prepare for the unsettling story of the phone call at midnight. Our story begins with a man named Alex, a night owl who was no stranger to staying up late. He was used to the quiet hours when the world was asleep, finding comfort in the silence. But one night, just as the clock struck midnight, his phone rang. He glanced at the screen, expecting to see a familiar name. Instead, it simply said, "Unknown." Confused but curious, he answered, but all he heard on the other end was silence, until a voice, his voice, came through the line, whispering, "Don't go to the basement." Alex felt a chill run down his spine. It was unmistakably his own voice, yet he had no memory of saying those words. Shaken, he ended the call, trying to convince himself it was a prank or a strange dream, but deep down, he felt an unsettling fear he couldn't shake. The next night, as the clock struck midnight, his phone rang again. Once more, the caller ID displayed "Unknown." This time, Alex hesitated, his finger hovering over the decline button, but curiosity got the better of him, and he picked up. The voice on the other end was his own, but this time, it was colder, more urgent. "Stay away from the mirror," it said, before the line went dead. Alex's heart pounded as he looked around his dimly lit apartment. It was as if his own future self was warning him, trying to protect him from something he didn't yet understand. Over the next few nights, the calls continued. Each time they revealed strange, cryptic warnings that seemed targeted to specific moments in his life. Don't open the door. Burn the journal. Never look outside at midnight. One night, after a particularly disturbing call, Alex decided to record the conversations. He wanted proof, something tangible to analyze in the daylight. That night, he waited by the phone, recorder in hand. At midnight, the call came, and he answered. "Who are you?" he asked, his voice trembling. There was a pause, then a chilling answer. "I am you, from the future." Alex felt his blood run cold. His future self went on to explain that each warning was meant to prevent terrible events that would happen in the coming days. The calls hinted at dark secrets he'd never known, mistakes he hadn't yet made, and the consequences that would follow if he ignored the warnings. Then, his future self said something that sent a shiver down his spine. "You'll hurt someone you love unless you listen carefully." After that, Alex became obsessed with the calls, living in constant fear of the next one. He began avoiding mirrors, staying out of his basement, and following each warning to the letter, terrified of making a mistake. But the calls grew more disturbing. One night, his future self gave him a new instruction. "At midnight tomorrow, go to the park on Elm Street." The voice was shaky, almost pleading, as if something terrible depended on his obedience. Unsure of what to expect, Alex followed the instructions, arriving at the park just before midnight. He waited, standing in the dark, listening to the distant rustling of leaves. And then, his phone rang. This time, when he answered, the voice was filled with despair. "Why didn't you stop me? Why did you let this happen?" The words sent a jolt of fear through him, and he demanded to know what he'd done, what terrible act he was destined to commit. That night, after returning home, Alex sat in his darkened apartment, staring at his phone. He knew the next call would be the last, that it would reveal the truth he had been dreading. As midnight approached, the air grew thick with tension. Then, right on time, his phone rang. He picked up, bracing himself. The voice on the other end was broken, almost pleading. "There's nothing you can do now," it said. "It's already set in motion." Alex's hands trembled as he listened, realizing that the calls had never been about preventing the future. They had been preparing him for it. His future self whispered one last sentence before the line went dead. "You are the monster you've been running from." The call ended, and in that moment, Alex understood. He had been warned, he had been told, but the darkness that awaited him was something he couldn't avoid. From that night on, the calls stopped, and Alex was left with the haunting realization that his fate was sealed. Sometimes, the truth is more frightening than any nightmare, especially when it comes from your own voice. Alex may never know exactly what future he was meant to avoid, but one thing is certain: when you answer a call from your future self, you may not like what you hear. Until next time, dear listeners, remember that some mysteries are best left unanswered. This is the Tales Keeper, signing off.